Hello and welcome to another video. Today we're going to take a look at a bit of a fun team, but also a team that always does very well for me when I use it in Lantern, Froslass and Shadow Charizard. This is mainly an ABB team where you use Froslass to lure out the Bastiodon or the Lantern so Charizard doesn't have to see it. But the way I use it, I basically just sack the Lantern, try and give the back to a shield or an energy advantage and just see the devastation that they can unleash upon the world with a shield or an energy advantage. This team does have a few core breakers, mainly Lantern. It's not the most balanced team, I'm not gonna lie, but as you're gonna see in this video, we're just gonna find a way to play out of some very difficult leads, and this team can just basically find a way. I have featured the team before on my channel, but the battles you play with this team are just always so good, and these are no different. Let's take a look at them. Going into the first game, we lead into an Altaria. This is a very bad lead. I always say swap Froslass, although it is the hard answer to Altaria. Just because if there is a Lantern or a Bastiodon, you would much rather see it on the Froslass and not on the Charizard. Plus Charizard is an absolutely incredible sweeper. We lure it on a Azumarill. Fun fact, Froslass does win the 1 shields against the Azumarill. If the Azumarill is not optimal, you can also win the 0 shields. We go for the first Shadow Ball, they do shield it. We go for the second one and they no shield it. I'm just going to be absolutely fine with taking a shield advantage here. And then try and farm them down with my Lantern. We can get to another Shadow Ball if they don't throw another move. This is a very nice detail in the Froslass Azumarill matchup, that they have to throw 2 moves in order to take out. So they have to expend all their energy, and then we can bring in the Lantern to just farm the Azumarill all the way down. Sometimes you have to play a little bit unconventionally with this team in order to take out some Pokemon that you don't want to see. For example, Altaria. We can go for the Surf before they get to another Play Rough here. Or we can take the Play Rough and come out with 100 energy so that we can get to 2 Thunderbolts on this Altaria, which will bring the Altaria very low or grab the last shield. Go for the first Thunderbolt, they no shield it, and we go up to the second Thunderbolt. This will bring the Altaria into a range where Charizard can farm it down. It will still be able to get to a move, but that is fine. They bring in a Deoxys on Charizard, and we go straight for the Blast Burn. Eventually, there it is. Go for the Blast Burn. This does about 63% to a Deoxys, so it's not quite enough from this range. They keep over farming. We go for the second Blast Burn. Let's take a look at this damage. Boom! Massive damage. Doesn't quite take them out, but the wing attack went through, so they're only going to be able to get off 1 move, which is absolutely crucial here. And then the Altaria can get to a move, but we should be able to get to this Dragon Claw before they get to another move and take out the Altaria. And that is the first game against an Altaria lead in the books. A very good game. Next game, lead into a Deoxys. Good lead for Water Gun Lantern because Deoxys has very high attack, but it has very low HP. So when you have a 1-turn move against it, like you're just shredding it basically. As you can see by these Water Guns just absolutely tearing through the Deoxys. I found out later that you can go for the Thunderbolt against Deoxys, and that is actually the best way to go about it. But this time they swap into an Umbreon, and that is pretty yikes, because we don't have a good response to this Umbreon. So we stay in, take a move on Lantern. Again, I'm just basically on a circuit, and then I'm going to try and CMP tie them on the next foul play. They don't go for the foul play, so instead they get an entire snarl through, which is of course not ideal, but they only overfarm by 2. Meaning they don't have a lot of energy coming out. So I'm thinking we can bring in the Charizard and potentially farm them all the way down. Come out with a lot of energy. They go for a move after 4, so they should be 3 away from the next one. Always 4-3, 4-3 for the Umbreon for the foul plays. So they just about don't get to another move. Foul plays are some moves that Charizard can take, so we do decide to take that one, and then they bring in the Deoxys. I think a Blast Burn is just about enough from this range. They did 8 counters earlier and threw a Psycho Boost, so I knew they were 2 away from the next one. It's 5-5 for the Psycho Boost, or always 5 for the Psycho Boost. So we try and CMP tie them with the Blast Burn. They do shield it and go for the Psycho Boost. Then bring in a Gustlord. We go for the Dragon Claw. This will either bring them into a range where we can fast move them down with Froslass, or grab the last shield so that we can bring in the Froslass. And this should be a pretty good game because it takes 4 Dragon Tails for the Gustlord to get to a Dragon Claw, and it takes 5 for them to get to a Crunch. It's 5-4 for the Brutal Swing if they're running it. So we can just overfarm quite a lot with the Froslass, and because the Deoxys threw all of its energy, it should still be 5 away from the next Psycho Boost, so we can outpace to the Shadow Ball. Once again, this team is very much about energy management. If you can manage your energy properly, you're gonna have a very good time with it. Next game lead into a Shadow Dragonite. Yikes. Swap into Froslass, and the opponent swaps into a Lickitung. Froslass does win the Zero Shields here. So we can go for that. I decided to go for a shield because I thought if it's the power whip, which I was expecting, we can live it. It does about 39% and get to another avalanche. Or we can shield it and then get to 2 avalanches. So I thought maybe they really wanted to keep switch, and we could grab both shields and then farm down with Lantern, but they do decide to let their Lickitung go, which I think might actually be the best play by the opponent, because Dragonite does not do well down shields. They bring back in the Dragonite against the Froslass. We get off this avalanche, which is of course gonna get shielded. It would absolutely destroy a Dragonite, but we get a lot of Powder Snow damage through on the Dragonite, and then bring back in the Lantern. Don't want to bring a Charizard into a Dragonite with energy. They farm up to a lot of energy. I think they're at the back-to-back Dragon Claws at this point. I'm just gonna sacrifice the Lantern, which is very often my strategy here. Load up, we do have the Surf, but now we don't want to expend it on this Dragonite with such little HP, so we bring in the Charizard to try and farm them down. They swap into Deoxys, and at this point, I can't really explain it. Sometimes you just get a feeling they're gonna shield. We go for the very risky bait, and they do shield it. Very nice. And then they farm up to 10, I think, so that the back-to-back the Psycho Boost. They go for the first one. A Blast Burn is not quite enough from this range, so I decide to try and overfarm instead, hoping I can lift this Psycho Boost, which is debuffed. We can live it. Then they should be 5 away from the third Psycho Boost, so we can do 5 more wing attacks. CMP tie them with the Blast Burn. I basically did more wing attack damage to make sure the Blast Burn would knock out. Take out the Deoxys, get to the Dragon Claw on the Dragonite, and we take out another Dragon lead. Very nice. Next game, lead into Lantern. Please have Water Gun. They're running Spark Lantern. This is the core breaker. But this is actually not a bad lead, because when they have Lantern in the lead, they don't have Lantern in the back. They're usually weak to Charizard in the back, or Froslass. So if we can do at least some damage with Lantern here, it should be quite alright. It always takes 7 sparks for the Lantern to get to Thunderbolt, so they threw this immediately. It doesn't quite take out Lantern, so I save it for a potential sack later, then bring in Froslass. They do get to another Surf, takes 5 for the Surf. And now we can overfarm quite a lot on the Lantern, up to 4, then wait a turn to make sure we see the Spark animation, to make sure they don't catch, then go for the Avalanche. And Avalanche does about 26%, so it should KO from this range, but they do decide to bring up a shield. You know what does even better against the backline of a Lantern than Charizard? A Charizard up a shield. They go for the Surf, it doesn't quite KO, so we get to the Avalanche, which should KO the Lantern, unless they put up the second shield as well. They do not. We only get 1 shield, unfortunately. Then they bring in Noctowl, and now it is Charizard Town. Town? Charizard Town. That sounds like an awesome town. No, Charizard time. Oh, I wish I could speak properly. That would be so much better. We go up to a lot of energy. They try and catch a Blast Burn on Venusaur, so we overfarm even more. And then for some reason they shield it. They did 4 Vine Whips, so they're 2 away from the Frenzy Plant. We can do 2 more wing attacks. CMP tie the Venusaur. We do win the CMP tie against Venusaur. Absolutely annihilate the Venusaur. They get to a Sky Attack on the Noctowl. And, well, I should make this way more exciting by saying, are they at another one? But they are nowhere near another one. So, So we get to the Blast Burn. Yes, very good caster here. Can speak and make things exciting. Next game, lead into a Shadow Victreebel. Save for Froslass. This is kind of awkward because Victreebel also wins the 1 shields against Froslass. But they're not staying in with Victreebel because they have Mr. Yikes himself in the back. Bastiodon. But good thing we're luring it out, so Charizard hopefully doesn't have to see it. Although it might. I should not be spoiling these things. We go for 2 Shadow Balls, which does actually bring the Bastiodon somewhat low. And now we can bring in the Lantern. But I wait out the switch timer a little bit, which I probably shouldn't have done. My thinking was I wanted my switch timer to be open for when I take out the Bastiodon so I can swap into Charizard as quickly as possible. But with these stone edges, the switch timer comes up now, and my opponent goes for a very, very smart play here. They swap out. They realize there is something else in the back weak to Bastiodon. And although Bastiodon is very, very low, even a very, very low Bastiodon can still do so much damage to a Charizard, as you're gonna see here. We can maybe try and go for 3 Dragon Claws. I don't think there's any way Charizard is taking out that Bastiodon, and it's just a bad time. Bastiodon takes out Charizard. It hurts. Next game, lead into Galarian Stunfisk. You generally want to try and throw in the middle of the 8th Mud Shot. I accidentally threw in CMP here, but we do grab the shield, and I'm like, if this is a Rock Slide, amazing. If it's an Earthquake, they're dry, so we have a shield advantage against a dry Stunfisk. And again, I would much rather just sacrifice the Lantern and keep a shield advantage for the back 2. So even if it's an Earthquake, I'm absolutely fine with it. But they keep baiting, and that's absolutely amazing. We go for the Surf right before they get to another Rock Slide, and they give us the second shield. Also, against the Stunfisk, they're very rarely going to have a Bastiodon behind the Stunfisk. So up 2 shields, Charizard and Froslass basically can't lose. Bring in the Charizard because I'm going to have to expend a shield anyways, even if I bring in the Froslass, because the Rock Slide still does so much damage. So I would rather get the farm on Charizard. They bring in a Azumarill, we bring in Froslass. This is a good thing about having 2 different sweepers in the back, although I'm still just going to try and set up Charizard here, because now the Bastiodon and the Water type are gone. Surely there's not a 3rd Charizard counter in the back. Go for the Shadow Ball. They went for the Play Rough. It's 6 and then 5 for the Play Rough, so there should be 2 away here, so we can go for the CMP tie. But I don't want to take out the Azumarill and let my Froslass, leave my Froslass in farm range for something. So I would rather undercharge the Shadow Ball so that I can potentially farm down the Azumarill instead of something else farming down my Froslass. But as I said, there can't be a 3rd Charizard counter in the back. There is. There's a 2nd Water type, but Charizard does not care about you being a Water type. Look at the damage from Blast Burn. Resisted Blast Burn. 2 of them takes out the Jellicent. Do not care about Water types. The opponent realizes they have no health left on any of their Pokemon, and they concede the match. Next game, lead into a Froslass. They swap into a Stunfisk. Of course, we have to stay in here, and we can go for the first Surf. Once again, I don't really want to shield my Lantern. They don't shield, unfortunately. I would have loved for them to give me a shield. Then they go for an Earthquake. Even if it is an Earthquake, I'm okay with it. I can just farm them down, expend 1 shield, and get a massive farm down on Charizard. But because they're Rock Slide, we get to the Surf on the CMP tie, on the Earthquake, and we take out the Stunfisk. Very good situation we're in here. The Stunfisk usually outpaces to a Rock Slide plus an Earthquake, but it's only by 1 turn. So because they expended 1 turn swapping into the Stunfisk, the Lantern did outpace to 2 Surfs. Also, it takes 7, the equivalent of 7 Powder Snows to get to the first Surf, but the equivalent of 6.5 to get to the second 2. So we can outpace the Froslass just barely with the Lantern. They only overfarmed by 1 here, so I think we can farm them down with Charizard if we bring it in, because they were 5 away from the next move. But they swap into a Shadow Swampert, another Water type, but another Water type that Charizard does not care about. Charizard does win, or Shadow Charizard does win the 2 shield against Shadow Swampert, as you're gonna see here. I want to put them into a range where 1 Dragon Claw is enough to take them out before throwing it. It does about 40%. So we go up to right before they get to their 3rd Hydro Cannon. I'm just gonna shield this, and now we can either take them out, come out with a lot of energy, or grab the last shield and then go for the 3rd Dragon Claw on CMP. It takes the same amount of wing attacks and mud shots to get to Dragon Claws and Hydro Cannons, and after the wing attacks, the Dragon Claw is enough to take out Swampert, and now we can farm down the Froslass. We don't even have to show our own Froslass. That is a good game. Next game, lead into a Shadow Dragonite. Again, safe swap, Froslass, and they swap into a Shadow Alolan Sandslash. Yikes. We do get to a Shadow Ball. This does a lot of damage, but it doesn't put them into a range where we can farm them down because Powder Snows are double resisted. They do 9 Shadow Claws, I think, and then they take out Froslass with a Drill Run, or was it 10? So they're either 2 or 3 Shadow Claws away from another move. But if I bring in Lantern and no shield this, my Lantern is going to be so low, the Dragonite is just going to be able to farm down everything, expend 2 shields, because Charizard does really not like Dragon Breath from Dragonite. So I do have to expend the shield, which is really not ideal. The Dragon Claw does significantly less, so I can no shield this and then overfarm a lot. And As you can see, these water guns are bringing the Dragonite into a range where one surf might be close to threatening them. So we go for the surf after overfarming a lot, and then they catch it on a Registeel. Yikes. Bring in the Charizard. I could go for the Blast Burn before they get to a Zap Cannon, but I have to come out with energy here. Otherwise, I just get farmed down by a 2-shielded Shadow Dragonite. So we overfarm up to 100 energy after expending the shield on the Zap Cannon. Go for the Blast Burn. This takes out the Registeel. Now, if we can get to 2 Dragon Claws to grab both shields, we might have a chance, but the Dragonite gets to a move right before we get to the back-to-back Dragon Claw. As you can see, if we'd gotten both of the shields, we would have been able to get to a surf as well and potentially take them out. It does about 33%. That would have definitely taken them out. Next game, we lead into a Kommo-o. Another yikes lead. Swap into Froslass. But Froslass and Kommo-o pays to the first 2 moves at the exact same time. And because we had to expend 1 turn to swap in, the Kommo-o is going to outpace the Froslass. Go for the Avalanche after shielding the Dragon Claw. A Froslass can, if it's a very good Froslass against a very good Kommo-o, you can live 1 Dragon Claw here in the 1 shield. So this is quite close to knocking out. But they're not running a very good Kommo-o, I don't think. Because my Froslass is very good. So we don't barely survive that Dragon Claw. So we can't get off the Avalanche. They are energy dry now. So we can bring in the Charizard. Get a big farm down. Please be weak to Charizard in the back. They are not weak to Charizard in the back. Go for the Blast Burn after 4. As I say, it takes 5 for the surf. So I overfarm a little bit more. And then at a random time, go for the catch on the surf on Lantern. This, I don't know, maybe more luck than skill. Or maybe I'm just that next level. They bring in a Medicham. And this looks kind of all doom and gloom. But is it? If we can leave the Medicham in a range where we can farm them down with Charizard, maybe there's a chance. We go for the surf, for the first surf here, thinking that we can get to 2. This puts the Medicham kinda in range, but we don't barely get off the second surf. But is the Medicham at the perfect range? They're dry now after throwing this Ice Punch. If we can farm them down in 6 wing attacks or less, which we can, we come up with a lot of energy here. But we take 1 too many counters. If we're taking 1 less counter damage, we might have been able to get off a Dragon Claw, then a Blast Burn to grab the shield and then do massive damage. I don't think it would have quite been enough. It does about 42% to a Lantern. But compared to how difficult that team was to go up against, like that team composition, that was a pretty good, pretty close game at the end. Next game, lead into a Sableye, pretty neutral lead. We don't get the Water Gun breakpoint, unfortunately. Against a quite bad Sableye, you can get a Water Gun breakpoint, or if you're running a semi-attack weighted Lantern. Go for the surf. It looked like they lagged a little bit, but they do get to their second foul play before we get to the second surf. We let the Lantern go, but the Lantern actually survives it, so we can bring in the Charizard, save the surf for later, and then they bring in a Dugong. Dugongs do like to shield the first move. I don't think they're not gonna take a non-debuffed Blast Burn, so I go for the bait, thinking they were gonna shield, and now we're gonna bring up the shield for this Icy Wind. It takes 5 for the first, 4 for the second, so we can overfarm a little bit and then go for the Blast Burn. This is about 64% if it's not debuffed by the attack, but with the debuff, it doesn't quite take out the Dugong. But I'm thinking, it's 5 away from another move to Dugong. This might be in perfect range to just come in and powder snow it down. So we're bringing the Froslass immediately, because now they're still switch locked and they can't swap out. So we get the full farm down with Froslass, which is absolutely massive. The Sableye is energy dry, so they're 5 away from the next one, because it's 6-6-5. They were at the 3rd cycle. They try to catch a move on their Alolan Sandslash. Nice attempt. We waited a turn, so they couldn't do it. Go for the Shadow Ball, does massive damage. This Avalanche, they have to shield it. The Sableye is too low, so they put up the shield. We snipe them with the Lantern, with the Surf we had loaded from earlier. This should take out the Alolan Sandslash. They bring back in the Sableye. They do get to a foul play, but we have a shield. They're not getting to 2 foul plays. So Froslass farms down the Sableye. That is a good game. Next game, bit of a tough lead. I decided to stay in because, once again, I really like trying to get a shield advantage. Lantern does get to a surf before the Swampert gets to an Earthquake. And I'm thinking, they might be thinking, wow, he's staying in with a Lantern against my Swampert. He must be weak to Swampert, so I'm gonna want to shield my Swampert. But it's all part of my master plan. Now we got the shield advantage. They go straight for the Earthquake. That's fine. They overfarmed a little bit, so they should be able to get to... I think they're 3 away from the next Hydro Cannon at this point, if I've counted correctly. So I try and CMP tie them, but I'm playing against someone I'm playing on like a semi-regular basis. So he knows me, and this was probably a bit silly to CMP tie when they went switch locked. So they catch the Dragon Claw on the Galarian Stunfisk. Very nice play by my opponent. But now we can go for the Blast Burn on this Galarian Stunfisk. This will take out with the no shield, but they do shield it. But we should be 5 away from the next Blast Burn because we got so much energy on the Charizard. Takes 5 for every Rock Slide for the Stunfisk. So we should be able to outpace once again and get to the Blast Burn on the CMP once again. Although it wasn't actually a CMP. I think my opponent might have been anticipating me trying to catch the Rock Slide and didn't actually throw it, which they know me too well. They should not know me this well. Yikes. I need to be less predictable. They bring in the Swampert once again. They did have a move banked and they overfarmed by 2 more. So they should only be 2 away from the next one. So they will be able to get to another Hydro Cannon on the Froslass. And this is looking quite bad. My opponent has played this amazingly. They really deserve this win. But they have a Shadow Gliscor on the back. So screw that. They're not going to get the win. We're just going to one-shot this Shadow Gliscor with the Avalanche. Goodbye, and now we're gonna farm down the Swampert. Very good game. My opponent really did deserve that win. They absolutely outplayed me. But the next game, lead into a Venusaur. Fun fact, Venusaur can actually beat the Froslass. It's IV dependent, especially if you swap in the Froslass, because they pace at the same time, and 1 Frenzy Plant in the 2 shields is enough to take out the Froslass. So if they've stayed in, they would have been able to win that if they have a semi-decent Venusaur that can live enough Powder Snows. But instead, they swap into Bastiodon. Yikes. They did 2 Vine Whips on the Venusaur, so they have 2 Vine Whips worth of energy, worth noting. This time, I don't want them to be able to swap out, as I learned from my mistake earlier. If they're allowed to swap out with their Bastiodon, even if they have like 10% HP on the Bastiodon, that's still going to be able to take out the Charizard, so I really want them not to be able to swap out. The switch timer is up. Please don't swap out. They're not swapping out. So now we can swap in Charizard. Of course, they're going to bring in the Venusaur. They do 4 more Vine Whips. They were only at 2, so this is only a Frenzy Plant. If they had done 1 more, I would have shielded this, because the Sludge Bomb does about 62%, or was it 72? It does a lot. You really want to shield it, but because it's only a Frenzy Plant, we don't have to shield it, and we got 4 Wing Attacks worth of energy head start against the Galarian Stunfisk. Guess how many Wing Attacks of a head start it takes to secure this matchup? Straight Blast Burn in the 2 shields? That's right, 4. So we can't just go straight Blast Burn against this Galarian Stunfisk. They have to make a call. They call it. It takes them out, one-shots the Stunfisk, and the opponent concedes the match. Next game, lead into a Galarian Weezing. Very cool spice. This is a very good lead for Lantern, especially if they're not running Play Rough, because then they can only throw non-stab Brutal Swings, which is not ideal. They swap into Medicham, we swap into Charizard, and they get to an Ice Punch. An Ice Punch doesn't hurt that much, but it is possible for the Medicham to farm down potentially if they land just 1 Ice Punch, because Charizard is just so frail. Also, Dragon Claw only does about 26%, so if we want to secure the shield or the knockout, we have to go for the Blast Burn at this range, and they do decide to shield it, unfortunately. I am addicted to shielding my Charizard, so we go for another shield. Can we farm them down in 6 Wing Attacks before they get to another move? I try to do it, realized last second that we can't, so we go for the Dragon Claw. If they shield this, it might kill through the shield. They don't shield it. They have a move on the Weezing, so if they bring it back in, we want to go for a move immediately to go for the CMP tie, which Charizard will of course win, so that we don't just let the Charizard go down with all of this energy. We do grab the last shield, and they do go for the Brutal Swing, meaning there are 2 Fairy Winds. Then they bring in an Umbreon. Yikes, this is not what we wanted to see. We have to stay in with Lantern. But because there are 2 Fairy Winds with the Galarian Weezing, they're 5 away from the Overheat. Take 7 for the Overheat, and they're 2 away from the Brutal Swing, because it's 5 and then 4 for the Brutal Swing. So if my Froslass doesn't get any energy, it will get outpaced to the Overheat, because it takes 6 Powder Snows for the Froslass to get to a move. And if it... So... And an Overheat one-shot. So I have to get some energy advantage on my Froslass before it faces the Galarian Weezing. So I actually swap it in here against the Umbreon, knowing I can live a foul play. But by taking this foul play, I have to get to the Avalanche on the Weezing before they get to a Brutal Swing. But the Umbreon, I can't quite farm it down. They were 3 away if I counted correctly. So we have to go for the Avalanche here. Hope we can get to the Avalanche before they get to a Brutal Swing. But they were only 2 off, so we barely don't get there. But the Lantern is still alive. It takes 5, then 4, then 5. So they're 5 away. Can we get to a surf before they get to another move? Yes, we can. Is this enough to take out the Galarian Weezing somehow? No, it's not even close. So we top left in that charge move, and that is a good game. That was the last battle for today, and overall, I have a hard time putting this in anything other than the fun to use category because it's simply so unbalanced that I don't feel like I can recommend it, but it is a lot of fun to use, and I'm always finding success with it somehow. I can't really explain how. I went 15-11 with it today. Not the best, not the worst, almost veteran. Other than that, fun fact of the day, in the Froslass versus Venusaur match, the Pokemon with the highest attack stat wins the 1s and 2s because it comes down, they've paced at the same time, so it comes down to who wins CMP. One Frenzy Plant is enough in the 1s and 2s, and one Avalanche is enough. Unless the Venusaur has too high attack, because then it simply gets Powder Snow down in the 2-shield scenario. Other than that, if you like what you see, or feel like you learned something, like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time.